Hello guys, welcome back. I'm Yusuf Shakeel and you are watching JavaScript tutorial series. In this video, we are going to learn about conditional statement, the switch case statement. So let's get started. Alright, so I have opened the project folder in Sublime Text, and inside the project folder, I have created a new file, switchcase.html, and I have written the following code. And inside the JS folder, I have created a new file, switchcase.js, which is this one. And I've included this JS file inside this HTML file using this script tag. And I've set the src to js/switchcase.js. And now let us go ahead and open this file in Chrome. So switchcase. And we'll also open the DevTools. So we'll go to View, Developer, and we'll select the Developer Tools. So we have the DevTools. And we'll switch to this Console tab. And since it's empty at this moment, that means we don't have any error. Alright. We use switch conditional statement when we want to compare a single value with a list of values and execute a piece of code according to a match. And please note, switch case is a compact form of the if-else statement. So remember in the previous video we did if-else? Well, switch case is a compact version of that. So let's check the syntax of switch case. So we use the switch keyword, then we have the opening and closing round brackets or parentheses, and then we have a value. This value can be a variable or a result of an expression. Then we have the opening and closing curly brackets, similar to what we have for if else. And then inside this switch, we have the case keyword. Then we have some value, let's say value 1. Then we use colon, and then we have the body of this case. So some code goes here. Then we use break to jump out of this switch. Then we can have another case that is another value. Let's say val2. Then we have some code goes here. So then we have some piece of code for case having value val2. Then we have break to jump out of this switch. Then we can have more number of case and value. And finally, we have default and colon. We don't have any value for default. And then we have the body. And then we have the code for the default. So some code goes here. And we don't use break for the default because it's the last default piece of code. Now, in order to understand switch case, let us take an example and explore it. So let me comment this. All right. Let's say we have a variable var x. And let's say we want to check whether the value of x is 1 or 2 or 3 or something else. And we want to do this using switch case. So to create a switch statement, we'll be using the switch keyword. And then we'll have a value inside this round brackets. And in this case, we are going to check the value of x. So we'll pass x. Then we'll have the opening and closing curly brackets. And then we'll have a case. And we want to check whether the value of x is 1. So the value for this case will be 1. Then we'll have colon. And then code for this case. So let's say we will console.log x is 1. And we'll break out of the switch case. And finally, we'll have, let's say, console.log end of code. Now, if the value of x is not 1, and we want to check whether the value of x is 2, so we'll have another case, and the value for this case will be 2, colon, and code for this case. So we'll write console.log x is 2, and then we'll break out of this switch case. Now let's say if the value of x is not 2, then let's say we have the third case, and the value for this case is 3, and code for this case x is 3, and then we break out of this switch case. And if the value of x is not 3 and something else, Then we'll have the default case and the code for the default console.log x is something else. And we don't need any break for the default. So we have a variable x and we want to see whether the value of x is 1, 2, 3 or something else. And we want to check this using switch case. So we have this switch and we are passing the value which is x, and then the value of this x is matched with the case value. So if the value of x is 1, then this case is matched. And so the code for this case is executed, that is this one. So we'll get x is 1 in the console. And then this line is executed. And this line is a break, which means whenever this line is executed, we break out of this switch. That is, we jump from this line 24 to line 38. And we ignore rest of the code. And finally, this line gets executed. That is, end of code printed in the console. But if the value of x is 2, then this case is ignored and this case is matched. So the code for this case is executed, that is this line. And we get x is 2 in the console. And then this line is executed. Because this line contains a break, so we jump from line 28 to out of the switch, that is here. And rest of this code is ignored. And finally, this last line is executed. But if the value of x is 3, then the first case is ignored. The second case is also ignored. But case 3, this one, is a match. And so the code for this case is executed. That is this line. And we get x is 3 in the console. Then this line is executed, which contains a break. So we jump out of the switch. And this one is ignored. And then we print this line in the console. But what if the value of x is something else? Let's say 4 or 10 or minus 10 or 0. Then in that case, case 1, it is not a match. Case 2, it is also not a match. Case 3, this one is also not a match. So finally, this default is executed. So this line gets executed and we get x is something else in the console. And then we come out of the switch and then this line gets executed and we get end of code. So let's say value of x is 1. So if value of x is 1, then case 1, this is a match, and so we'll get x is 1, then we'll jump out of the switch because of this break, and then we'll have end of code. So if we save this file, go back to Chrome, and if we reload, we get x is 1 and then end of code. Now let's say the value of x is 2. Then in that case, case 1 is ignored, but case 2 is a match. So the code for case 2 is executed. That is, we get x is 2 in the console, then this line is executed, and because it has a break, we jump out of the switch and we ignore rest of the code. And then this line is executed and we get end of code. So now if we save the file, go back to Chrome and reload, we get x is 2 and then end of code. Similarly, if the value of x is 3, then this is ignored, and case 3 is a match. So this code is executed and we get x is 3 in the console. Then this line is executed and it contains a break. So we jump out of the switch and this code is ignored. And then this line is executed and we get end of code. So if we save the file, go back to Chrome and reload, we get x is 3 and end of code. And let's say if the value of x is something else, let's say 100, then this is ignored, this is ignored, this is also ignored. And since we have a default, so this line gets executed. And then we jump out of the switch and then this line is executed. So now if we save the file and go back to Chrome and reload, we get X is something else and then end of code. Please note, this default is optional, and if we comment this out, and now if we run the code, the value of X is 100, so this first case will be ignored, the case 2 will be ignored, and case 3 will be ignored. And since we have commented out the default part, so we have no other case to match, so we'll come out of the switch and we'll only print this line, that is end of code. So if we save the file, go back to Chrome, and if we reload, we get end of code. We can even have multiple cases sharing the same code. So let me comment this and let us explore the second example where we have multiple cases sharing a same piece of code. So let's say we have a variable X, and let's say we have a switch, and we want to check the value of X. So let's say if the value of X is 1 or 2 or 3, then we'll print X is 1 or 2 or 3. So we can write case 1 semicolon, and we can console log X is 1, and we can write break. Then we can have case 2, and we can console log X is 2, and similarly we can have another case for case 3, and we can write console log X is 3. But let's say if the value of X is 1 or 2 or 3, we want to print X is 1 or 2 or 3. So we can write X is 1 or 2 or 3. And we can copy paste this for the 3 cases. But as you can see, we are repeating this same code 3 times. So we can make the 3 cases use the same code by merging them. And we can merge them by simply removing these 2 and then writing the code that we want to share with the 3 cases. So in this scenario, if the value of X is 1 or 2 or 3, then this code will get executed. And we'll have X is 1 or 2 or 3 in the console. And since we have break in the next line, so we'll jump out of the switch. Similarly, let's say we also want to check if the value of X is 4 or 5 or 6, then we want to console value of X is 4 or 5 or 6. So we are going to use the same code for the 3 cases. So we'll write case 4 colon, case 5 colon, case 6 colon, and then we can simply copy this and paste it, and we can write X is 4 or 5 or 6, and then the break. And if we want, we can also have a default. So if there is no match, then the default code will get executed. So let's say console.log X is something else. And then out of the switch, we can console.log end of code. Let's say if the value of X is set to 2, then in the switch, we will match the value of X with case 1, which is not a match. So we'll match the value of X with case 2, and it is a match. So this code will get executed, and we'll have X is 1 or 2 or 3 in the console. Then we have break, So we'll jump out of the switch and we'll then execute the last line, which is end of code. So if we save the file, go back to Chrome, and if we reload, we get x is 1 or 2 or 3, and then end of code. Similarly, if let's say the value of x is 6, then we are going to match the value of x with case 1, which is not a match, case 2, also not a match, case 3, not a match. So this entire thing, this entire block of code is ignored. Then we move to this case. Case 4, not a match. Case 5, not a match. But case 6, this value is a match. So this code is executed. So we'll get x is 4 or 5 or 6 in the console. Then this line is executed, which is a break. So we jump out of the switch. And then finally this line, that is end of code. So if we save the file, go back to Chrome, clear the console and reload, we get x is 4 or 5 or 6, and then end of code. Similarly, if the value of x is something else, let's say 10, then in that case, this value of x will be matched with the value of the cases. So case 1 value, not a match. Case 2 value, not a match. Case 3, not a match. So this entire code is ignored. Then value 4, not a match. Value 5, not a match. 6, not a match. So this is also ignored. And since we have this default, so this line gets executed. So in the console, we'll get x is something else. And since this is the default and the last one, so we jump out of switch and then this line gets executed. That is end of code. So if we save the file, go back to Chrome, clear the console and reload, we get x is something else and then end of code. We can also have the value of x as a string. So let's check one more example. So let me comment this. And let's say we have a variable x. We'll set the value letter. And let's say we have a switch. And we want to match the value of x with some cases. So let's say if the value of x is hello, then we'll console log hello and we'll break. And if the value of x is high, then we'll console log high and we'll break. And if the value is something else, then we'll have a default and we'll console log something else. And then out of the switch, we can have the last line, end of code. Let's say the value of x is hello. So in the switch, we'll match the value of x with these two cases. And since the value of x is hello, so this case is a match. So the code for this case is executed, that is this one. So in the console, we'll get hello. And then we have this break. So we'll jump out of the switch, ignoring these two. And then we'll console log end of code. So if we save the file, go back to Chrome, clear the console and reload, we get hello and end of code. Similarly, if the value of x is, let's say, high, then this is not a match, but this case is a match. So the code for this case is executed, that is this line. So we'll get high in the console, and then we have this break. So we'll jump out of the switch and we'll ignore this. Then we'll print end of code. So if we save the file, go back to Chrome, and if we reload, we get high, end of code. Similarly, if the value is something else, let's say QWERTY, then in that case, this case is not a match. This case is also not a match. And since we have a default, so the code for default gets executed. So in the console, we'll get something else, then we'll jump out of the switch, and then we'll print end of code. So if we save the file, go back to Chrome, and if we reload, we get something else, and then end of code. Alright guys, this brings us to the end of this tutorial. I'll post the tutorial notes on my website dyclassroom.com, and all the code that we are writing in this tutorial series, I'll put them in my GitHub repository. You'll find all the important links in the video description, so please check that out. And if you find this video interesting, then please like this video and please subscribe my channel. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video, and like always, stay happy and keep smiling. Bye.